I doing this right? Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I like making things out of paper, and I like making things cooler. Especially my figures. Sometimes figures don't look all that screen accurate. All they need is a bit of touch up here and there to unleash their hidden potential. I also love using everyday tools and materials to recreate iconic scenes from my figures, so they can shine on my display. Subscribe to my channel and join my DIY adventure as I ask myself the same question every week. Can I make it? Last week, I finally finished my Age of Ultron display. A bit crowded, but very awesome. Check it out if you haven't already. Today, I'm gonna work on my favorite Spider-Man, the Symbiote Spider-Man from the 90s Spider-Man the Animated Series. I watched it every day after school, secretly hoping they'll air the episodes revolving around the symbiote. This design is just so cool. It's a very simple yet sleek design. Before I deconstruct the figure, let me just be honest here. Unfortunately, this is a knockoff figure. This figure was so hard to find and was always out of stock. I wasn't sure if I was able to get one, so I ended up having two. This one here is genuine and authentic, still in the packaging. The one I'm about to work on is a knockoff. I actually wasn't sure at first. Everything looks so similar at a glance. But Still Figuring Out has a nice video explaining the differences between the two. It was very helpful. Shout out to Still Figuring Out. Alright, let's deconstruct this figure. There's an FAQ on the paint and brushes I use in the description box below. Overall, there's nothing wrong with this figure. All the paint details are there, and are done quite nicely. There are a few odd spots here and there on the spider symbol, probably because this is a knockoff figure. The seams on the sides and the torso are quite obvious, and this is just me being picky. The thighs for some reason are much glossier than the rest of the figure. Okay, all of these are minor fixes. What I really want to do is add the blue highlights back in, just like the cartoon. So, can I make it? Before I do the highlights, let me just patch the gaps on the torso first. I'm likely gonna add some highlights there, so I need a smooth surface. I'm going to use some air-dry clay to fill in the gaps. I'm gonna put a bit of clay over the seams, and then run my finger over them to get rid of the excess and smooth out the surface. Okay, that seems to work. Cool. Let's paint. I'm gonna paint over the black. It sounds silly, but I want more of a matte look, because this figure is supposed to look 2D in the end, so a flatter finish would look better. Also, I want the black to be consistent. Right now you can kinda see that various parts are glossier than others. Gotta paint over the clay. Ooh, the gaps are gone. Nice. And lastly, gotta mattify the thighs and legs. Now before I do the highlights, I'm gonna seal the black paint with the matte varnish. I don't think this is a necessary step, but it will make it easier to fix mistakes later in my opinion. Alright, here's the figure all matte. It looks very cool. All there's left are the highlights. So, in the cartoon, the highlight acts like an outline. It kinda appears on the back or underside of the character. But I can't just paint the entire back blue. That'll look terrible. I also can't just draw a line down the middle, because that'll only look right from the front. Instead, I'm going to do something similar to my Venom figure, since I'm very likely going to display these two together. Hasbro did this wavy line thing on Venom. I personally think they went a little overboard, so I modified it a bit to make it less distracting. Check that video out if you're interested. I'm going to use what I've learned from that video and apply it to this Spider-Man figure. The issue with adding the highlight is that it will always look weird at the wrong angle, so I have to keep that in mind. The goal is to add the lines to areas that will look good in most angles, which is the front and at around 45 degrees to the sides. Let me start with the obvious areas first, such as the neck and the collarbone area. I don't just want to add thin lines everywhere. I want to try adding in some shapes that help define the muscle definition. Not sure if it'll work, but since this is a knockoff figure, I feel a little braver. Ooh, I'm happy with how this is going. Okay, this is exciting. Let's do the arm next. I'm going to continue the line down the shoulder area, but I'm going to break up the line on this bicep and forearm. I want to avoid having a continuous line down the arm. Don't want it to end up looking like sportswear. After all, these are supposed to be highlights. Onto the torso. I take back my previous comment. I'm going to do a line down the sides, kinda where the seams are. But because the torso is always bending, the lines are always broken up in various ways. Now for the groin area, I like what I've done to Venom, so I'm going to replicate that. And let me add a few more lines down the legs to highlight the muscles. As for the feet, I like doing an outline around the edges, but not over the entire feet. I'm going to keep the toes unpainted. A couple more strokes here and there. Alright, onto the head. I'm going to start with the chin. I know I want the chin and jaw highlighted. The baby blue looks so good against the black. What a great design choice. Okay, I want to stop here, but the head looks bottom heavy, so I'm going to add those curvy hooks on the sides. Of all the lines, I think these are my favorite. They complement the head shape so well and they don't look distracting, unless you turn the head all the way to the back. But that rarely happens, so it's all good. Okay, here are all the lines. Not bad, but it still looks a bit bare, especially from the back. Let me add a few more lines for the back view so the figure looks more balanced. It's always weird doing someone's backside. I didn't love what I did to Venom's triceps, so I'm going to try something different for Spider-Man. Moving on. I'm not satisfied with the line on the sides of his neck, so I'm adding a bit more shape to the back of the neck and shoulder area. Alright, a couple more strokes later. This is now looking pretty good. He kinda has that Tron feel to him now. The back view is still a bit meh, but it's fine because all the other angles are great. I also did the hands off camera. I love how they turned out. Okay, now I'm gonna refine the lines with the black, cleaning up any jagged lines to make the highlight looks crisper and reshaping them to make them look cleaner. Now that everything is all done, I'm going to apply another layer of matte varnish to seal the highlight and add a bit of protection to the paint. I don't want to accidentally chip the paint. for the final touches, let me just patch up the spider symbol with the white. Hey, you can now support me on Patreon. I post quite regularly there, from behind the scenes updates to sneak peeks to video breakdowns. Top tier members will receive a DIY 3D mini poster every month. These mini posters look great by themselves, but even cooler next to other mini posters. I love making things, and this is my way to thank my supporters. The link to my Patreon is in the description box down below. Alright, here's the finished figure. Both versions look great in my opinion. I still really like the unpainted look. But if I'm displaying this figure with Venom, I gotta add the highlights. Ooh, the highlight looks better up close. Maybe I could have done them thicker, but I don't want them to become too distracting. Let's compare Spider-Man and Venom. Ooh, they look great side by side. The highlight looks consistent on both figures. Venom doesn't look odd anymore. I love that they share the same blue. It further connects the two characters. Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. That was interesting. I'm glad I have two of this figure. Adding the highlights was a struggle. Not because it was difficult, but because the original figure was already so good. I didn't want to do it because it was already perfect, but it doesn't look right next to Venom, so every stroke felt like a mistake. The end result turned out pretty cool. I won't say this is a perfect custom, because there will always be a bad angle. But I do think I captured that 2D cell shading look quite well. It looks quite natural in most angles. And best of all, Spider-Man looks amazing next to Venom. I know technically they were never in the same scene, but I'm gonna display them together. Alright, let's end it for the photo shoot. Part of me is going meh, but the other part is loving it. The black and blue combination is just so pleasing to look at. The matte finish makes the color look very flat, very 2D. The only complaint I have is that this knockoff figure has very loose joints, so posing him is a bit of a challenge. I think I'll keep my genuine figure sealed. I don't usually keep my figures in the packaging, but this is probably my favorite version of Spider-Man. So I'm gonna keep the other one unopened and put it in my treasure box. I still can't get over how cool these two look together. I never had these figures back in the late 90s, so I feel like I'm a kid again now that I have both. The red and blue contrast makes the figures stand out against each other. This kinda looks weird, like they're blending in as one symbiote. This shot took me a while to set up, but I managed to balance Spider-Man on Venom. They're so fun to pose together. Give this a like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. Next week's video is going to be a little bit different. And as always, stay inspired and I'll see you next week. I can make it, so can you.